you so much for joining us for all our Workspace Spark subscribers. This is our August edition of Workspace Spark. And so we have such an amazing author today. I had a chance to read her book. It is in your August box. And you'll see the nice flyer of her in your box as well. So we have Christine Parakis here, and we want you to just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here today and for the kind words about my book. I was really excited to put it out into the world. I've been a best-selling author, a lawyer, a business advisor, a C-suite executive, a professionally licensed boat captain. And I've started, grown, and expanded 11 businesses on my own and with partners. And I've helped hundreds of clients on 5 continents to do the same. And I draw from all these experiences, and the most recently, having survived back-to-back record-breaking Category 5 hurricanes that were 2 weeks apart, that ripped the roof off my house, left me buried alive for almost 24 hours, and then emerging finally in a post-apocalyptic landscape without running water, electricity, telecoms, internet, imagine, even no cooking gas. So it was quite an experience.
Reading this made me feel like I was in a movie. I couldn't believe it. And then when the next hurricane, so you all have to read this book. It is good. I was going to say what inspired you, but let's talk a little bit about that. So going through that, surviving, and then saying, you know what, those life lessons I can then teach other people. So can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to have gone through a hurricane to experience a Category 5 level catastrophe, right? Whether it's drowning in debt or flooding in the streets or the roof blowing off a relationship, I think most of us have experienced some kind of what feels like, a Category 5 level catastrophe. And so I really wanted to talk about that for others because, I started writing this book while I was trapped because there was nothing else to do. And writing is one of those exercises that activates the prefrontal cortex of the brain. So it helped me to keep the panic down because I had no idea how I was going to be rescued, and no plan and no communications and nobody around. I was alone in this situation. So, and many of us feel alone in these situations. So I started writing this book because I needed something to do when I thought I might die. And, it was a catharsis through the process, but at the end of it, I really wanted something that others could identify with and take with them to use. And so that was the inspiration for identifying that there's many Category 5 level experiences out there that we endure. Sometimes we're in it alone, or we think we are, and to offer up some of what I call the 7 barometers of resilience to help people have something they can follow as a roadmap to come through and be resilient, grow their leadership skills, and ultimately thrive.
Awesome. I can only imagine. Writing has actually helped me get out of some of my own Category 5 situations. So
Yeah.
I completely agree with that. I can imagine though being in the middle of a hurricane writing. So the being able to use that tool and knowing that that can help you and help others, right? And so what does resilient mean to you? We hear that word a lot, but a resilient leader, what does that really mean?
Well, I think it depends on the circumstance, right? I mean, if we're not, the first word that comes up is survival, right? We want to get through the experience. We don't want these things to kill us, even though sometimes it feels like it might, and being buried alive is a physical experience, but, the devastation of a breakup or crushing debt can feel like it's going to kill you, so to be able to go from that paralyzing fear of what might happen into action. That to me is where resilience comes in. And what are the actions that we can take in those situations is the leadership aspect, because, whether it's self-leadership or peer leadership within our communities, or a designated leadership role where you have a title or a position of responsibility and a team to lead or people to report to you, or just active followership is a form of leadership where we are the best followers we can be to help move the engine along.
Yes, yes. I think it's super important to be resilient, right? And I just don't think that a lot of people, I love the fact that you are comparing the Category 5 because we do live category 5 situations, but I don't think people, once you compare it to a hurricane, you do realize all the trauma that can come from it, the resilience that comes from it, how we emerge out of those things, but we really don't compare the two. So that was a great analogy.
Yeah, and let's face it, we're recording this on I don't know what wave we're in, but we're still under the specter of COVID and a global pandemic. We're not out from underneath it as we record this. And that to me is a category 5 level experience, right? And so everybody, I mean, now it's the great equalizer because most of us have been touched in some way by it, or at least had our lifestyles curtailed at a minimum, if not our
Right.
businesses come to a grinding halt or our finances jeopardized. So we're in it. And, the one thing that we haven't talked about enough yet, and we are not even on the other side enough, I think, to say, is that post-traumatic portion of it. It's that coming out of, my shelter after being buried alive and seeing a post-apocalyptic landscape. What do you do now?
Yeah.
And it can be paralyzing. And there are people who go into places that are, filled with war-torn regions and refugees that are literally, sitting on their rubble of what used to be their homes, paralyzed, unable to take action, hoping and waiting for someone to come.
Yeah.
And I saw that on my island too. And, it's for the leaders to step forward and take action.
Yeah, I was reading a book a few months ago that says the body keeps score, and it just talks about how like trauma, you know, we hold it in our body, the stress that we hold in. I can only imagine, and even if it doesn't occur to you, but seeing it now, we see things on TV and on our social media. So I completely um, just so great that when you compare it to a cat, because people know what a category 5 hurricane is even if they've never been in one. When you compare it to that, it kind of gives you a visual of what people are going through. Now, do you believe that resilient leaders are born, or do you think that that can be a learned behavior?
Well, I'd like to believe they can be created, right? That circumstance can bring it out of us, what we're capable of. I've been through a number of these experiences, not just the weather, right? But we don't know what we're capable of until we're in it. And these were my first hurricanes, right? This back to back.
Right.
Yeah, and before I've been on the island with hurricane warnings, and then we end up at the bar drinking and laughing about how we
Right.
dodged another one, even though we've shored up. And you do everything you can do, but I didn't know what I didn't know, right? I had no plan. I had no idea of what would be my steps if the roof blew off my house, right? I never thought about those things. And so I was living in ignorant bliss. And I think most of us, until we experience the big one, whatever that might be, we don't know what we're capable of. And, I think many times we will rise to the occasion, and we might do it, hopefully, in the company of our community. And that makes community all the more important to bring out the resilient leader in us.
Agreed. I think community is so important. Why did you think it was important to write about community and talk about leadership? I just think that most times I see leadership trainings, people don't talk about community much.
Yeah, well, I was the one in ignorant bliss, right? So my friends were, miles down the road, or they were in other countries or offshore. I was in an isolated island on the top of a hill, living in this paradise of my, British Virgin Islands. And I didn't know my neighbors. I knew my landlord, who was, shared a house space on the land. And so when it came time and I needed help, I had no telephone, no plan, no way to communicate with anyone. My family couldn't find out if I lived or died for some time. And I was completely ill prepared for this. And I was forced, first of all, to get help somehow, right? Figure out a plan to get somebody to rescue me. And then to make it through while we were trapped up on our hill. It took some days. I think I was trapped up there like 10 days before we could come down and even find out how my friends had fared who were local. And so, community can be forced on you, like it was on me, where I'm alone. I don't necessarily have everything I need. And what can I do for you in order to get what I need became
Right.
my mantra and how I got through.
Awesome. In the book, you mentioned 3 things senior leaders must do during a crisis. Can you share those today?
Yes, well, communicate, right? We
Right.
have to have the courage to think and to say what we think, feel, need, and want, right? And
Mm,
leaders can exemplify that. And leaders have to have situational as well as self-awareness, right?
right.
EQ is kind of a common word we throw around today, and it becomes accentuated in a category 5 situation. We have to be able to, I draw from my experiences as a boat captain and a professional yacht racer, and in these team settings, we have to always have one hand on the boat is what I describe it as. And so by always knowing where you are, and then always knowing what's around you, maintaining that level of awareness, you exemplify that for your team. And then your team also knows what to expect from you. And you are consistent with that. And then it's critical that we have a float plan, right? We don't leave shore as a boat captain. I don't leave shore without a float plan. And there I was with no plan on land, right? So, we have to have a float plan. We have to communicate with our team and establish good communication practices and help everybody understand what are we going to do in our communication? What does the situation call for? And how do we adjust for the situation? And then being able to really be in touch with who we are and what's around us so we can lead.
I always say, no matter what level of my life, something I learned along the way has always prepared me for that. Who knew that, you being on a team and being a boat captain and all those things could transfer into your survival skills of what you need to do to survive, I think sometimes as leaders, and I wanted to say this to people listening, we think our career paths are supposed to be linear and they're not, right? But all those different hats that we may wear can position us for a category 5 or for us to be able to use tools to help our team. So I think that was really, who knew that your survival skills, right? You may not look at them as survival skills. Those are part of the hats that you wore throughout your life. They could have saved your life or helped you save someone else's.
Well, and that could be literal or figurative, right? Because sometimes in business, we're doing that. I've had clients tell me, I was remarking about a doctor, saving someone's life. And I've had a client say to me, we feel like you're saving our life, and when, it's whatever the stakes are, right? How can we be there for another? And as entrepreneurs, we're literally, our lives are designed around service and being there for others. And so, being able to do that most effectively and be the best service provider that we can is our responsibility.
Yeah, agreed. I think even as employees too, I think sometimes we forget that we are the captains of our own
Yes.
emotions and our own ship, right? And so, yes, as entrepreneurs, we think that, but even as employees, you think that you don't have a say, and that having emotional intelligence, having situational awareness, I think is so important too. So yes, well, a lot of people are finding it difficult to motivate their teams right now.
Yes.
What recommendations do you have for someone who may be listening on the call?
Well, because we're in this category 5 situation, as I see it, I talk about something called a tolerance for adversity, really, to understand what's your capacity for weathering this storm, right? Which we are still in, right? And so, to understand and, again, situational awareness, right? Be aware of what your team is going through. You're dealing with people who may be working from home, dealing with childcare, school issues, COVID. There's so many things that people are going through right now. So we have to stay aware of that. And then we want to figure out and amp up our tolerance for this adversity. And what are some of the things we can do? We can create, I call them expedition rules, where we bring our teams together and we create a safe container to deal with conflict resolution, because conflict is inevitable in these situations
Mm,
and it's going to happen. And we establish communication styles, and we establish a means of communication and team responsibility, so everybody knows what's expected of them, or of each other and of themselves. And if you think about it like taking a trek to Mount Everest, right, where you've got to carry everything on your back and you've got to rely on everybody because your survival is at stake. And we're all in this together, and we have a safe container, and we know what's expected of us, and we know that we can count on the persons on either side of us. We can step forward and be our best selves, and we can literally create a new culture, and make it a utopia for what we've always wanted, and let go, pick and choose and let go of the stuff that didn't work for us that we wanted to let go of from the past.
Yes, I totally agree. Totally agree. Well, this has been so great. Can you just leave us with one thing that you would like to, one tip or one tool you would like to leave with the people that are listening?
Well, it's the biggest overriding lesson that I learned from the storms, and that is don't go it alone, right? I know with some of us being solopreneurs, and I've been a solopreneur in my career many times, is that we can feel alone. It can be a very lonely journey to be an entrepreneur without partners or a community around you. But there are people going through what you're going through, or who've been on that road before, and lean into that. Find the mentors, find the, your compatriots and people to just communicate with, mastermind if you have to, so that you can not go it alone and reach your destination safely, more efficiently, and with more joy.
Yes, I do agree too. And for those who are still in your careers, you're not entrepreneurs, same. You're not alone. There's someone, even if they're not at your company, there are forums, there are Facebook groups, there's mentors, there's books out there that can help you. So again, thank you so much, Christine, for being with us today. Everyone, I
Thank,
hope that you enjoy your book. And until next time, we'll see you again.
thank you so much, Vanessa. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.